Welcome to today's episode of winningwithwalmart.com, where we delve into the omnichannel strategies essential for today's retail brands. Joining us today are Christopher and Jen Jane, the visionary co-founders of Proper Good. It's a brand that's redefining the ready meal industry. Christopher, Jen, great to have you on the conversation today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Wonderful. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. Well, just to kind of get us started, I'd love to hear kind of a little bit of the background, kind of your personal journey into launching natural products and better for you products, but also specifically kind of the origin story, so to speak, of Proper Good.
Oh. You want to take that
Definitely.
question?
Yeah, sure. No, definitely. It's a long story. We'll keep it brief. So Jennifer and I, brother and sister, we both grew up in the UK, but lived in America over a decade or so now. And Proper Good is actually our second food brand we've worked on, and we've been in this space for quite some time, should we say? So yeah, it's an interesting industry, which we'll get into obviously all the details of strategy. But essentially, we've ran small businesses together since we were teenagers, all sorts of stuff from making and selling T-shirts and things like that through to more legitimate businesses like Proper Good. Yeah, we launched this together about 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the main reason that we did Proper Good was coming from England and just the EU in general. There was just so many other kind of like ready meals that were good for you available over there. And then when we moved to the United States, there just wasn't anything we could like grab. It was very much expensive stuff. Like if you wanted a healthy option on DoorDash, it was very expensive, or it was a very cheap option that wasn't good for you. So we just wanted to kind of create something that we had enjoyed really in the UK, but better, a better version of that. And it was a version of something that we just hadn't seen in the US at all. And we're just quite healthy people. Honestly, we like to eat well. We like look at what's in the food we eat and all that type of thing. So we wanted to create some meals that we wanted to eat, and we're confident that other people would want that as well. And luckily for us, we were correct, I guess. So that was good.
That's great. Yeah. So, when it comes to the launch strategy of or how you were positioning Proper Good as a brand in the market, so you're saying ready food, better for you. And then you've taken what we're going to dive into this a bit. You've taken a kind of interesting approach of adding the extra lens of for the mass market with this brand, so to speak. So unpack that a little bit for me.
Sure.
Yeah, that was. I was just saying, I think that was key inside there is that for that more mass consumer market. In that, at the time I was doing my MBA at the time, and we, Jen come to visit and so forth. We'd find you're so busy, right? Just busy days, long hours. There's great snacks available. There's great beverages available, right? Loads are really good in terms of protein and sugar content and natural brands and so on and so forth. But meals was actually really tough. You could get some really good frozen meals that were delivered, but prohibitively expensive for a lot of people. And then, as Jen alluded to, on that low end, there are a lot of low-priced products, but either they weren't very tasty, or they had ingredients lists as long as your arm, or this sort of thing. So we really said, look, like we don't want to make overly expensive, good quality food for people. That exists, right? That exists. You can definitely get that if you're willing to spend $15 to $20 per meal on a takeaway salad or something like that. But if you're an everyday person, also spend, around, let's call it $5 for a quick lunch or a quick snack when you get home from work, or an evening meal after a long shift, or even on a long shift, that doesn't really exist. As Jen alluded to, if you use app delivery, we did an experiment last week for fun. You go and order literally one thing, some chicken nuggets or something. By the time you add platform, app, delivery, blah, 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 you're at $15 for minimum. That is not approachable for the average person on a daily routine. So we basically said, look, if we're going to do this, we don't want to be polarized to, either coastal areas or high income or anything like that. We want to make something that's mass, true middle market that is approachable for that everyday person. You have to make a better choice, right? If you're just trying to make, hey, what can I do today that's a slightly better choice than yesterday? I'm going to have Proper Good versus maybe a fast food lunch or, something like that. So that was really right from day one that we said, look, if we want to do this, it needs to be applicable to almost everyone, just to help them make an affordable daily better choice.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, I feel awful saying this, but the truth is, at least for me, is, you have these very tasty and cheap options with the different, fast food retailers and things, but you tend to feel awful afterwards, right? When you're eating it, it feels good, the price feels good, and afterwards you're just in like a slump and it's just like a bit rough. So we were trying to make something that's genuinely packed with stuff, like I said, that we wanted to eat. So it's affordable, it is fast, you have it in your house, it's almost immediate, really, 60 to 90 seconds. And after you've had it, you feel good because you've put wholesome food in your body. So it's that kind of the whole thing. Like people had, seemingly done different areas of it, but not that whole arc from before enjoyment and the feeling good afterwards thing. And so, with the overnight oats and the oatmeals and soups and things, we feel that with all of them. So yeah, that was, I think, another part of the planning on the actual food side of it, as well as being applicable to the mass consumer.
That's a great combination of things to go after. Like you said, the premium. When people think premium, they often think premium and price point as well, that accompanies that. So to be able to offer that premium and convenience and healthy, that's probably a large undertaking. I can only imagine. We can talk a lot about how do you really do that and keep the price point accessible to that middle market.
Oh, it's very hard. Yes. No, honestly, Chris and I will be there sometimes, measuring nuts on a micro scale because you're trying to work, want to include nuts because they're healthy and, we like them for energy and stuff like that. But obviously nuts are so expensive, or like blueberries are so expensive. And you're trying to work out that balance of nutrition and flavor and ultimately what the price will be. It will just be testing these micro changes until we're happy with all of the elements combined type of thing.
Fantastic. Well, that's just the iterative process and really testing out. I think we'll probably address this a little later too. The advantages you have in why you're able to emerge into this space and kind of upgrade a category, so to speak, is I would imagine partly linked to the ability that you have the ability to change and to pivot and to experiment and do these things to find how do you do this economically viably. And so we can get to that maybe in a minute, but when we talk about kind of the inception of Proper Good, back me up a little bit to when it launched and what were the factors involved, maybe macro factors or others that influence how you launched. So let's talk about that a bit.
For sure. I'll jump in on that one to start with. So kind of macro is key, and that we launched around April 2020. So that was, COVID, right, the height of everything shutting down. And obviously been working on the brand for 6 to 9 months before that. And I think what you said was key actually in terms of nimbleness of supply chain. We can talk on that a bit more later. But, we rapidly went from, hey, we have this idea for a better for you, shelf stable meal, essentially. We launched that in pouches via eatpropergood.com. Literally, I think the same day we were told from the local authorities to sort of not go outside. So it was a super, super crazy time, obviously. But to an extent, you got to play the game that's in front of you. And, retail was off the table. Trade shows are off the table. Live sampling was off the table, like all of that. So naturally, right, it's like we're going to go D2C pretty hard to begin with. Obviously, Omnichannel we knew would be a key piece, but D2C at the time was really A, the only option, but B, we had kind of built the business for that. So we have, it's lightweight, flexible pouches. We have a good price to weight ratio for shipping. So we knew we could compete D2C. We could scale that as its own channel. Obviously, at the time, we had no idea how long that would last with COVID and so on and so forth. But yeah, it was a real mixture of we built the products to work across an omni-channel, but the other channels were pretty much taken away from us just with macro environment at the beginning.
And Jen, maybe you can speak a little bit to kind of how did that roll out? Where did you guys, how did you activate that D2C channel?
Oh. It's very classic, really. We started on Shopify and, started with some little ads. And I remember, the day we got our first sale from someone we didn't know, a very exciting moment for the brand. Does anybody know this person? No, they definitely got to us through an ad. And we started with soup just to... Basically, the soups for us was something that we like as a quick, healthy meal. So we just kind of leant straight into something we knew, and we just launched with 4 soups. They're actually a couple of them were keto because Chris was doing keto at the time. Mm-hmm. So that was another part of the strategy. The keto diet was also very big. So the ads were just a bit more affordable then as well than they are currently. And so we just lent into the keto and the healthy lifestyle and just got people to our, very beginner store, I guess, at the time. And we saw the sales come in. And from there, we just started to obviously adapt. But yeah, the very, very beginning, I'm sure for most brands is just extremely simple, just that proof of concept. And, that came at that time.
And so
just to quickly add
2020,
on.
yeah, go ahead.
No, just a quick add on to that. I think just right. Like, honestly, it's actually quite simple when you look at it. Right, you kind of slap up a website, get the products up, and start analyzing some click-through data, and that's kind of it. And then obviously that iterates over time. But I mean, all the things we found work well for us D2C now, from build your own boxes and all these other kind of fun things. Like, I mean, none of that existed at the beginning, right, Jen? I mean, it was literally just dead simple template out of the box, obviously with our logos and colors, plus a bit of money on Facebook, because as Jen said at the time, like we could, it's a very easy way to analyze what's working, especially as we had some keto focused items, some plant-based items, some gluten-free items. We could really sort of try to test where the clicks are coming from.
Gotcha. And so to continue on with that, maybe what was one major change you found? You said you started with keto, those things, and as you're testing, iterating right at launch, give us an example of one of those changes based on the data or what you were seeing in the early stage.
Yeah, so one of the soups we launched with was it was called butternut and carrot soup, butternut squash and carrot soup. And nobody really bought it on a first order, but if they bought it as part of our bundle pack, it was always bought on a second order. So we realized that everybody liked the flavor of this soup, but nobody liked the name of the soup. And as soon as we updated it from butternut and carrot we didn't change the recipe. It still was butternut squash and carrot soup, but we just called it butternut squash soup. It completely switched. And then suddenly the ads for that soup were going well. People bought on a first order. So that was just one of those, little anomalies in the data that were like, wait a minute, why does no one buy this on a first order? So that was a good switch. And one of the other big ones was our chicken and mushroom soup, and that was on the other end of the data with the reviews. So the reviews were barbelled, like truly barbelled. It was either 5 stars, this is the best packaged soup I've ever had, can't believe the ingredients list, so clean, etc., or this is the most disgusting tasting soup I've ever had and I hate it. It was literally crazy. And so we started to do a lot of analyzing and reaching out directly to people to try to understand why. And we found that thyme is a very polarizing ingredient, just like cilantro. Some people just taste it in a different way. And so once we removed the thyme that a lot of people were finding really bitter, then it was back to basically all pretty much 5 stars. People loved it. If you liked chicken and mushroom, you're almost guaranteed to like this soup type of thing. And so that was a recipe iteration that we did from the data that was coming in. And both of those problems got solved really from the D2C data that we got.
Totally. It's so fun to hear that story. I can think of probably 10 more that are very similar just along those lines. And I think it'll actually play into some of the Walmart stuff that we're obviously going to talk about in terms of how do we decide A, to go into Walmart, and then B, which SKUs and pack changes and so on. And it's one of the other just big ones that comes to mind is just the change of focus from subset health thing like keto, like plant-based, just to more kind of flavor and convenience. Because, initially, and I think this is common in natural food specifically, you kind of stack them all, right? If we can be dairy-free, we'll appeal to them. What about if we could add kosher on there? Then we'll appeal to these guys. And then you so on and so on. So you have 12 labels on the front. But the challenge is, for the person who doesn't want those things, it doesn't sound very tasty, right? Like if you don't have any allergies and you're not following a certain, eating system, do you want a dairy-free, plant-based, gluten-free cookie? And the answer is probably not. I mean, dairy is one of the biggest categories in the grocery store, right? If you're not allergic to dairy, dairy is delicious. So like, so suddenly you put dairy-free and massive on everything, you kind of polarize it, the other people. So obviously we still do those things. We still believe in those things from an integrity and ingredient point of view, but they're not as front and center as they were right at the beginning. I do think that helps. Potentially from Facebook ads, you can obviously target certain groups. But as you move into retail and you think about more that mass consumer versus the early adopters, that has been a fundamental shift, I would say.
Yep, I agreed. I think another thing that Chris and I talk about in relation to that is the kind of the loud minority, to not get kind of tricked into or persuaded, I guess, into making these big changes without the actual data. Because if you look at our Facebook ads, things like that right now, you will see a lot of people saying, why is this soup not gluten-free? Why is this, not vegan, et cetera, et cetera. And we do offer different subsets, but when we do the mass data evaluation, exactly what Chris just said, it's very clear. Most people in America just want a tasty, slightly healthier option than what's already available without diving into these really specific niches. So we do try to, you see those comments, you're like, oh my goodness, this is stressful. We need to make changes. And then you actually look at the data and you realize probably the best path is this just, simple, tasty, easy access type of thing.
Those are all incredible insights and from the DDC side, and then we can, like you talked about, Chris, talking about how those have served you as you started moving into Walmart specifically.
Yep.
Let's kind of carry the conversation into there. At what point did you decide Walmart's going to be part of this strategy? And then maybe how did data or what you were learning inform that strategy of going into Walmart?
Definitely. I'll start on that one. So I think what was really interesting, as I kind of alluded to at the beginning, we knew we would want to be omni-channel at some point, and right, and that's just simple kind of channel data, right? If you look at rough math, and I'm sure this varies by the way you look, but let's say 85% of food purchases happen in a physical environment, right? That's just, right off the bat. So you've got 15% left to play with. Half of that happens on Amazon. Right, brilliant. So we're now down to 7.5% of food purchases that do not happen in a store or on Amazon. So now we're at a fraction of the market. And then you look, obviously, if you look at, data, general, let's say 100,000 people come to the website, good data is like 3 to 4% of those convert to buy. So for every 100,000 people we get to the website, let's call it 96,000 of them are not making a purchase. Now that's after learning about us enough to click a link or type it in or however they've got there to actually get to our homepage. And now 96% of them leave. And that's a good number. Like that's just crazy. So you're like, we have to meet the customer where they're going to be. And that is going to be in retail. That's just number one. And with that, back to our goal really of that helping that everyday person make a better choice, we knew that didn't really naturally put us in the kind of extreme natural channel. That really played to, hey, how do we work in mass retail? How do we work in much bigger channels from day one? So yeah, we took a slightly unusual strategy. We went from D2C to, a couple of thousand Walmart stores pretty much overnight. We didn't have any other retail to lean on. But for us, it just made sense for all the reasons we've said. From a price point position, from, we look at our D2C data of who we were selling to, it truly was that mass consumer. We had, 20,000 plus reviews of, who this consumer is. So we decided to say, hey, look, we want to win at Walmart. How do we make that work? And how do we really focus? Because the size of the prize is obviously enormous, right? I mean, it's Fortune 1 company. It's the largest retailer in the world. So if we have that opportunity, and thankfully we did, just, Walmart sees a similar thing to we did, right? That they're obviously growing. If you look at their earnings call, I believe, most of their growth was coming from higher income households that are naturally looking for better for you products. We fitted that mold very nicely, and hence we were able to form really, really quite partnership-based relationship with the buyers of, we've got items that your customers want. How do we make that make sense? And, once you get to that, it's less buy, sell. It's more, hey, everyone can win here. Let's put a strategy together. I don't know if that answers your question. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think it was interesting to see that season where the premiumization in Walmart, the higher, I think the majority, when I think it's maybe 2021 or so, in the earnings calls, the majority of growth in e-commerce was coming from families with net worths of 100,000 or more, those kind of elements. And so there was key indicators. And so great alignment with the strategies there. Coming from the data-driven side, coming from the D2C side, how did you approach going into brick and mortar and maybe the digital component as well? What did that look like for y'all?
Well, I think the data from D2C, it just showed that we, in theory, would like the Walmart consumer would love proper good, because when you look at all of our data, it's so hard to pin down who our customer is. And so they call, Walmart the mirror of America. And so that kind of is what our D2C customer is as well. Like we have as many kind of 18-year-old kids enjoying proper good and having it as a lunchtime thing at school, to 80-year-olds having it because arthritis has set in. They need a meal that's easy to open, easy to heat, and easy to enjoy, and everything in between. So when you look at Walmart, obviously everybody's in Walmart. So I think we felt pretty good about going into there. Of course, people knowing about us was the problem. We're center store, we're surrounded by some really big players in the market, and having the D2C email lists, SMS, obviously all this community that we've built online allowed us to at least, let everybody know that already loved Proper Good. And essentially we asked them like friends of, please go into Walmart, please buy, and obviously we did different rewards programs and things to try to just get people in there buying, telling their friends about it, that type of thing. And I think the really cool thing about it was the entry point in Walmart is so much easier. D2C, we do free shipping after $35. So really it's $35 kind of entry point for the brand online. Whereas in Walmart, our meals start at $3. So you're talking $3 bet. You're going to try this new brand. Will you like it or not? Obviously, Walmart has a great refund policy and all that stuff too. So it's just there is no risk. We also do the same online with our happiness guarantee. So it's just a low risk for a consumer to come to us, try our meal. And fortunately, we have a great repeat rate. So I guess, that works well for us.
So you were able to, part of the strategy is able to show we're going to support sell-through through this audience we have. We're going to be able to drive sales at the aisle, at the point of purchase there in those stores. Because when maybe some brands are looking to in emerging, when they think going from 0 retail to 2,000 stores, there's a lot of layers of sophistication that come into supply chain, fulfillment, all those elements, and how do you support that? But one thing you clearly had in spades leading up to it was the sense of we know the data, we know how to engage our community, whether it's as Facebook groups, other email lists, all those elements. Those were all assets that you brought to that relationship to support sell-through. Yep. Is what I'm hearing. And at the same time, Walmart was truly going omnichannel, the kind of the one Walmart initiative. So they had the in-store experience, but they also had the digital site through the Walmart.com site and marketplace, combining both third-party sellers and 1P brands that are sold in-store. So rising OPD opportunities, all those types of things. So how did that play into the strategy as well for you when you were how did you view the Walmart.com portion of the retail strategy as you were looking at what that looked like?
Yeah, so we did the classic, I guess, lots of ads and trying to lead people to that side of things. And we also on our D2C site have the Destiny maps, that type of thing, to try to get people to shop via Walmart.com as well, or do the click and collect through the website as well. And really just utilizing all of the assets that they have on the Walmart.com listings, just all of the brand info. And yeah, I know that I chat with Josh, with you guys all the time about getting all those page listings up and, obviously making sure they're high percentage ratings and all of that type of stuff, and SEO side of things, just really just trying to optimize Walmart.com on every level that we know about to try to make us findable. Compared to some of these other brands, we just really want to get in front of people, because we have found that if we're in front of people, people do buy us. So our biggest challenge is that. And obviously having the amount of traffic that Walmart.com has, it's just incredible to log in and there we are at the top of the page. Certainly helps with the awareness and the sales.
Yeah, and I think just to add, the good news is obviously we've been doing D2C for a couple of years, right? We had a lot of knowledge about what was working. So although creating all those content pages and so on, obviously to get to the right ranking, it's a lot of work for sure. But in terms of, we have most of those assets, right? We know the sort of words that people click on. We have the imagery that we know converts the best in A/B testing. So it was sort of, just rejigging a lot of that for the purpose of Walmart.com. What I will say as well is a general focus of theirs, obviously, as I'm sure you're aware, just from buyer meetings and so on, there's a lot of interest in obviously growing Walmart.com and how do we do that. And for us, we're still a relatively small brand in that we couldn't really do totally different pack formats or things like that. But to Jen's point, we can try and drive traffic both in store and to Walmart.com through, we have an asset of, hundreds of thousands of people on email and SMS and things like that. And while we're obviously not going to drop $1 million on day one on Connect ads, we can certainly show, hey, here's all the assets we have, how we're directionally trying to put them into either your store or to click on the .com. That's a real partnership thing to show that like we want to grow in this channel, just given the size of the prize. So I think it's, there's no silver bullet. It's the kind of, 1,000 little cuts thing here in that just do them all very, very well, which is no small task, obviously, for a small team. And especially, as you said, we weren't testing a region. We weren't testing a single product, sorry. We had a multitude of products in quite a big amount of stores from day one.
From my perspective, one of the things that's been impressive with your brand is, despite, like you're saying, a relatively smaller team, maybe as not an incumbent brand, legacy brand in the space in the center aisle, the things you've been doing with excellence shows through. So all those assets, all those things, to be able to execute at that level has been great. And I would say that the ability to, like you said, partner with the buyers, one of those proactive elements of showing how you're able to bring new shoppers to the marketplace, potentially even, and that segment that they already see is growing. Those types of strategies we are seeing work incredibly well when brands are integrating the two, and you guys have done that with excellence. And so I'm still learning from your approaches as well, because it's been phenomenal to see, and you definitely have learned about. It's evident you've learned a lot, even preceding this engagement with Walmart.
For sure.
So you had, as D2C, you had, like we've talked about, you've tested incrementally, what's the optimized package for shipping, D2C, those kind of elements and all those cost factors. But then you add in on the physical shelf and what it looks like to face a product on that shelf and capture the eye, capture the attention in a physical arena. Were there any adjustments you made kind of from to bring in the best of both worlds? What's digital on the digital shelf and what's physical in the physical shelf?
Mm-hmm. Well, we have lots to say about that. So when we went into Walmart, we had the exact same pack formats as we had online, which I think we now realize we should have probably updated it when we entered, but we are currently almost at the end now of a complete brand refresh. And the reason I think the difference is because online and obviously supported by your own website, people just have so much more information about the brand, and the pack was almost part of it, but it wasn't front and center. Whereas obviously in the aisle, it is front and center. There is nothing else. And so we have actually just gone through a complete brand refresh to really show the tastiness of the product on the front of the pack, which didn't really come through before, because it's always with an ad, right? It's always with the bowl, the steaming bowl. It's always looking tasty. But in store, obviously it's just a little bag on a shelf by itself. And he hasn't got much to work with. So we basically reconfigured the whole front of pack, which we'll be rolling out here in the next few months. And we have done so much data, so much testing on that to really try and optimize that. So I think that the short answer is, on shelf, it needs to look tasty, and we didn't make it look as tasty. I think it was because we'd had success online, and then we didn't realize how much assistance it needed on shelf. And so we felt really good about the fact that it was selling well. And then with that additional bump, we're excited to see what could happen in the future with these changes.
Yeah, no, it's been honestly one of the most fun projects that we've worked on over the last few years, of just really deep diving taking that kind of binary data of what's good and bad, and just actually say, right, from a graphics, from a visual, all of that, on a, Jen said, a little bag sitting by himself in a Walmart somewhere. Like, how do you actually translate that to something that, the average shopper, 2 to 3 seconds to make a purchase decision, or at least to pick it up? How do we increase that? Because obviously an incremental change there, scaled over all the products in all the stores, is pretty much one of the most valuable things we could do. And as a company we like out of the UK that refers to it as packvertising, right? Because the pack is your advertising. That's as simple as that. So optimizing that front of pack for what the consumer wants, which in our space is flavor and convenience. is really the holy grail of just making it all work. Because at the end of the day, although we've got, a decent sized D2C business, as I said, hundreds of thousands of people across email, SMS, and Facebook groups, and all the rest of it, in a country as big as America, with as many consumers as you have, Jennifer and I could sit here all day, every day, doing stuff, and it will not move the needle in the same way. Correct pack architecture, correct pricing, correct front of pack design will naturally just move the ball in the right direction. It's just, it's a big task. So, I say we could sit here all day, every day, and it won't make as big an impact as those things. So some of those things were not optimized to go into Walmart at the beginning, but yeah, the next few months it'll be a really exciting change, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great example of the physical, seeing it in a different context, in the physical context,
Yep.
and how that informs the branding and positioning of the product. How has and on the other side, sometimes natively brick and mortar brands struggle with how to make the economics work in a digital space because their packaging is only made for that context, and they don't consider the fulfillment costs and other requirements for a digital age and digital fulfillment. So it's interesting to see it from both sides. Let's maybe use that as a bridge in talking about, so now you exist in a space where you have a large following in the D2C environment. We've talked about driving some of that traffic to either walmart.com or directly in store for shopping, hybrid of both. What does that customer journey look like now between those two environments? Are there any other things that come to mind?
Yeah, so we're trying to essentially complete that loop. So if people discover us on D2C, they go to Walmart, and obviously vice versa, discover us in Walmart and then coming back to D2C. So Chris and I kind of look at it as two separate things, in the sense of the D2C store is our test and iterate. It's new flavors. It's, we make short runs to see what people think. So the kind of incentive, I guess, to go from Walmart to go to D2C is to try new flavors. And we also do weird perks, like we give fluffy socks out with all the orders when it's freezing cold outside, and we do free spoons and free other random things. So there's more of obviously the customer experience. And then obviously the opposite of getting people to Walmart because it's, hey, you don't have to wait for shipping, especially obviously any D2C brand knows certain times of the year over the holidays, absolute nightmare. Shipping products on time is out of our control. So it's so wonderful to say, hey, maybe don't shop online with us, right now. You can go and, grab our best sellers at your local Walmart. And so just letting people know that it is the best sellers that are there and they are always available. Whereas the D2C side of things with the shipping makes stuff much more turbulent, I guess. So in a way, it's nice because you have that very solid bestseller, easy access local side of the business. And then the more artsy, perks, customer experience that sometimes is unfortunately less reliable just to the nature of online shipping.
Just to add to that, as you call it, a consumer journey, I think that's key, right? Obviously, on one end of the spectrum, you're a commodity, you're a food item, you're a job to be done to replace, meal prep or whatever it is. And the other end, you're an experience. As Jen said, you can collect the 10 different colors of spoons for all your subscription orders, or at Christmas, we have fun socks and things. So how do you blend the two of those? And it's a funny one, right? Because go and have a look in your fridge right now and tell me the brand story and the founders and the thing behind more than like two products. I bet you can't, right? I'd be shocked if you can. And, but there are a few that break through, right? The Justin's Nut Butters, the RX bars, the Halo Tops of the world. They have managed to create a brand experience outside of a commodity. And that's actually a really nuanced thing to do. And I think that journey, though, is key. Obviously, if we can get you to discover us in Walmart through vibrant packaging and affordable price point, you love the product from just a taste point of view, and it solves that problem in your day. If we can get you online through a cross sell, right? So on our oatmeals, it'll say, did you know we make soups? Or if there's a QR code to link you to join a Facebook group or something like that. If we can get you to jump across the hurdle across those channels, now you're on an email list, or now you've been tagged on a website. Now we can really introduce you to those, as Jen said, a seasonal drop for pumpkin soup for that season, or whatever it is. That creates a journey that the value exceeds the sum of the parts. And I think that is just really quite interesting for us. but it's difficult, right? It's difficult, it's nuanced, and half the time it's what's working, what's not working, where should we spend the money? We've by no means solved it, but I think that general goal is, as you said, a true omni-channel customer experience across product and brand. That's about 100 different things right there.
Agreed. And I would say just real quick on the data side, like online, we know that if people shop across category, they tend to come back a lot more, right? Like if they're buying overnight oats and oatmeal and soups, chili, curry, etc., just that mixed basket online, it just tends to be more orders. And so when we're in Walmart, we don't have any data to support it, but our theory is if, like Chris was just saying, if we can get people to they're buying an oatmeal, from buying that, they learn that, oh yeah, 2 aisles over in the soup aisle, you can buy our soup, you can buy our chili, etc. We believe that if we can just get people trying more of the meals and seeing how they fit into their lives, really, just like they do for us, like the breakfast, lunch, and dinner option, it isn't just breakfast, it isn't just dinner, it's many different options for many different lifestyles as well. Like some people want them for at home, obviously at work for later in the day, or going camping, whatever it might be. Just really showcasing that breadth of use across category is what we're trying to do. So yeah, between the packs, they all speak to each other, they all link up in some way, just to try to get more awareness really of where we are in store.
And Christopher, you mentioned the holy grail earlier of design and brand story and getting them to engage. One of those other holy grails is that data, right? Especially when you're in
Yep.
retail, and Walmart's evolving the data they're providing in some ways as they're moving from the DSS reporting into Luminate, whether it's basic or charter,
Yep.
those kind of elements. I'm excited to see what evolves there that's available,
Yep.
especially when it comes through the .com metrics, that you can get some more of those elements about the shopper behavior and what they're doing as they're building their basket. So Walmart's continuing to move in that direction, which will be, I'm sure everybody will be like kids in a candy store once we get more of that data in different
Yep.
ways. But how has the data you have so far, point of sale, those kind of elements at the store level, is that influencing even the online strategy in some ways, or how's that informing your brand beyond maybe just Walmart aisle?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fascinating. Oh, no.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, the good news that we have had just in immediate data that came to mind is we've found that when we do any kind of features or anything like that, people just buy the products. And so I think that has just kind of reiterated to us that the awareness is where it's at. If people know we exist, they're interested and they buy, and everything draws back to that really. And the data that we got from the features and just additional placements has been very, very good and very, very promising, which is, just makes you feel good, I guess, about the meals and people wanting to try them.
Yeah, just to slice that data up a little bit, there's a few things. As you said, we don't, D2C, we have more data than we know what to do with, right? From a journey and run from start to finish. Walmart, you obviously don't get that consumer level data. We get store level data, SKU level data, but you don't get consumer level data. So you have to kind of aggregate that. And what's interesting is if you look at a few things, obviously the basic units per store per week, either in units or dollars, or ideally both, if we can do that properly. And then on top of Walmart.com reviews, right? Obviously, we hope that those reviews match the D2C sentiment just for sort of general fit, if you will, a little more anecdotal, but just general fit. But what's interesting is it takes time, right? Even, when you launch into a reset of a new category, I mean, it takes months to like properly get like a level piece of data that we can analyze. And then as Jen said, we'll get, we just did a New Year Islander feature for the overnight oats that went really well. So some great data. But of course, that's an isolated subset of the stores. So we're focusing on that. And now you want to see how that lift sustains after the feature. So that's going to be another 8 weeks of analysis. And suddenly you're like to do this sort of what's the shelf pre-feature? What's the lift during feature? What's the new, hopefully increased shelf after feature? I mean, that could be a 15 to 20 week endeavor. That's half a year. And it's like, so in terms of, whereas D2C, we go, hey, what should we do today? Hey, let's spend more money on this. Let's launch this. Let's test this. Let's try this email. Let's install this new plugin app. It's so quick. Whereas retail is obviously not quick. But retail is a much bigger prize, obviously, at the end of the day. So For us, we obviously look for things like reviews and features and units per store. What's interesting is, we've only been in store, just over a year or so with some items, and some items less, some items only six months or so now. But slice that up in sort of 12-week data, you can see, are the general units per store per week up and to the right? Yes or no? Obviously, if it's no, you've got probably a problem that you really want to address. But if that's generally directionally correct, it's just positive signals, right? And I've spoken to, so many brands that are, 10, 20 times our size. And if you look at some of their early data in store, some things do just take time, right? The first year versus second versus third to build that awareness, to build that repeat revenue, to build that kind of flywheel in store. It does just take time. There's a general benefit to obviously being on shelf over time. But at the same time, you want to hit your velocity goals and so on and so forth. So it's a balancing act. I would say we have a lot less actionable data on a week to week. So, we get that weekly sales report of dollars per store, and it's really hard to look at that, right? Because you're like, up this week is up 30%. Oh, next week is down 10%. Next week is up 20%. These are wild fluctuations. But if you aggregate that into sort of 12-week sections over the course of a year, you're like, okay, now the data is clean, the data is bucketed, actually is heading in the right direction. But obviously, day to day, like who knows what's going to happen? It could be the weather's too hot for soup, or they're closed for 2 days because it's the Christmas week, so your sales are down 30%, or whatever it is. So you really need to look at it in more of an aggregate way. Where D2C, we obviously nail it very, very granularly.
How long did it take you to change that sense of ready for the nimble data and then kind of building that muscle of the longer segmented look?
Still evolving, I would say. You can't help but click on that weekly sales report you get, right? Just click on it and have a poke through, and you're like, it's honestly not that helpful though, right? It's honestly either a dopamine hit if it's gone well, or upset if it's gone bad. And you're like, the last 7 days makes absolutely no difference, right? Do we feel we have product market fit from a price, competitive landscape, so on and so forth? Yes. Are we doing everything we can do to move this data in the right direction? Yes. Are the buyers happy? Are the reviews good? Are our in-stocks high? To your point about Walmart Connect, like our click-through rates and so on, does it all look correct? Yes. The dollars on a Monday versus last Monday doesn't really matter, which is, hopefully it takes care of itself if you do everything else.
Well, we could keep talking. There's so many other questions that I'd love to ask you, and maybe we'll just have to do a part two at some point. One of the questions I do want to ask, kind of as you've got the advantage of the nimble D2C type brand who's looking at these opportunities in the digital space, as well as, like you said, you've got to take methodical steps in the brick and mortar, and because they have high ROI, but also high stakes and just a lot of things to put in place in that regard. I'm excited to see the brand refresh coming out. Look forward to seeing that. Anything else when we look at the digital space? It could be the Walmart marketplace or otherwise, other maybe marketing strategies. There's a lot of buzz around TikTok right now, some other things. Anything you guys are looking at saying this might be something we experiment with or needle mover for us? Or maybe the other, sorry, long question. Or do you look at those right now, kind of keying in on the daily metric sentiment we were just talking about? Are those shiny objects? How do you make that decision?
Sorry, I'm just thinking. I think this kind of relates. Yeah, I think this kind of relates to your question. So one of the things in terms of the marketing side, it all starts with the product, right? And so I think what Chris and I do a lot of on the digital side is just asking. We ask so much before we make stuff or when we're in the initial stages to help like make the direction make sense type of thing. I think we've learned that we maybe have quite nuanced tastes about certain things, and we'll be very confident of, this will be a great product. And then we ask, and you can quite quickly see that isn't actually a great product. It's something we like, but maybe not many other people like. And then we obviously ask for input. We offer other flavor options. And then we can quite quickly see, this is the one. This is what everybody wants somebody to make. No other companies are making it. We're going to make it. And obviously going to make it in the same way, and it will be a proper good style. And I think using that data to kick off the marketing in terms of actually making something people want is such a basic thing, I guess, but something that the digital side of things really helps with in all of the different communities and obviously ads and wait lists and all of that stuff. So I would say always implementing that is a great option.
Agreed. And I'll just give a few ones that come to mind on your question. So TikTok's obviously really interesting, right? Obviously a massive platform growing in many different ways. And one of the challenges, there's not necessarily a huge amount of purchase intent on TikTok, right? Like if you're on Walmart.com or you're walking through Walmart, like you're clearly ready to spend money on groceries or related items. If you're on TikTok, you're not necessarily looking for that. So there can be a lot of brand value, but we have a few friends that have, gone viral on TikTok, and it just hasn't resulted in any sales because it's not a purchase intent environment. It's very hard to then, translate that to an in-store environment. Obviously, still of benefit, but not necessarily directly attributable to a purchase. With that, though, I mean, some things that we've seen really go well, like the Walmart kind of haul videos, right? Where someone sort of walks through the parking lot, goes and finds your product. Those are just great, right? They're fun to watch. They're sort of sped up videos, with some sort of music over the top. Those do well. People like making them. People like watching them. They're great content for us, so we lean into those a lot. In terms of the marketing piece, to your point, we're still a small brand with a lot of distribution, right? So we have to, what can we actually do? And most people I speak to kind of recommend that market within the walls of the store, right? If we do national brand marketing, we just don't have enough penetration, right? Like, let's say I live in Austin, we're in the Walmarts here, but that's 2 stores out of the entire city, right? Basically. So like, in terms of if I see you on a billboard, can I walk into X store, Y store? No, you have to go to Walmart. So that's going to be really hard for us to effectively spend from a brand awareness point of view. So what can we do to truly spend within the walls of the store? Obviously, that could be a lot of zip code targeted or kind of geolocated ads. That can be obviously the Walmart.com pieces. We know that's a directly attributable click. On top of that, obviously, there are in-store apps, right? From Aisle and Ibotta and all these other things that actually drive a true purchase within the walls of the store, and we can attribute that spend. So I think for us, until we're a larger brand, focusing on that will likely be the move. And I'm trying to avoid shiny objects, as you said, because there's a lot of them.
Well, this has been a great conversation, Christopher, Jen. Thank you both for taking the time. I know there's a lot of things going on. We're in especially in the CPG space. There's a lot of things coming up in this season, and just for your own brands perspective, there's a lot of things you have in the works. So appreciate you both taking the time to talk with us. To our listeners, we hope you found today's conversation enlightening, applicable. Be sure to check out Proper Goods offerings both online. You can go to eatpropergood.com, or you can check them out in nearest Walmart. They're in over 2,000. One call out, they're in 2 different aisles. So you can find them in the soup aisle as well as breakfast aisle. Soups, obviously with their soups, and breakfast with their oatmeal and overnight bars, or overnight oats. And if you want to follow them on socials, it's just at Eat Proper Good. We'll have all this noted below the episode. But thank you again, both of you, for joining us today. And for you as listeners, join us next time on Winning with Walmart as we continue conversations regarding insights of what it takes to succeed in today's retail landscape as an omni-channel brand.